In December of 2010, I suffered from complex autoimmunity gone awry when doctors unknowingly gave me a medication that impacted my liver. At that time, we already knew my lungs and my kidneys were compromised. By missing the liver, the medication, which would have otherwise been entirely benign, ended up compromising the whole system. And from that, per my medical records, I fell. There was a traumatic brain injury. The combination of systemic organ failure, the hit to the head, led to an automatic coma. I was helicoptered to Johns Hopkins Hospital, where I went into my near-death experience. So for me, my consciousness begins leaving the body in ICU. And this is where I begin to observe what in the beginning felt like a lucid dream. Now, at this point, per my understanding and my intuition, I wasn't fully separated from the human, from the body. And so there was some identification and knowing of the human and wanting to take care of the body and return to the soma. And yet at the same time, there was this magnetic gravitational-like pull to the other side. And that is ultimately what anchored me. And I pivoted from this very human scene very, very rapidly through what to me appeared like the atmosphere into the sky or the stars or the cosmos. And that is how the other side appeared to me. It was light, it was vibration, it was felt sense. It was the most abundant, beautiful love I had ever experienced. When I initially got there, I was pulled into these three lights, a trifecta of beauty, and they were, to me, a ruby tone, an amethyst gem tone, and what I would describe as an emerald as well. And these lights were so familiar to me. It was as if I were participating in a cosmic familial reunion. The light knew me and I knew it. And for the first time, I really felt seen and validated. To me, on the other side, there were aspects of my consciousness that are still with me and embodied. They were the same there as they are here. That might be because I was in a comatose state and not entirely dead. I don't know. What I do know is that I was very much me, yet not an embodied version of me. And I felt so enchanted by those lights that I initially did not notice the magnitude of abundance and the vibrations that were dancing all around me. At this point, I start to realize that I am without form, that I am formless, and that I may become one with lights, and some lights come into me and share their warmth and their understanding. Now you have to imagine, nothing is being said with words. Everything is said with vibration. Everything is said through the highest vibration. There is no time. So for me, it was this beautiful ebb and flow of energies. And yet, looking back, I quantify it by time because it was 3.5 days. And it felt like eternity when I speak of it. Even now, it feels as if that period of time, for lack of better terms, was longer than when I was actually embodied. And prior to coma, I had been in my human form for 29 years in this incarnation. Now over there, I'm there 3 days asleep technically. I'm held by these angelics, that's how I received them at least, in the beginning. And I'm so just elated to be with them. And so they held me, and as they were doing that, messages were coming in, all sorts of messages about the body, about what happened. And now that I understand from my own experiences how the etheric chakras work, this makes more sense. At the time, it was all experienced as my consciousness receiving all of this. It was instantaneous as well. I mean, things literally moved at the speed of light. You'd think something or feel something and boom, it was there. They answered it. You were received, you were loved, you were acknowledged. And for me, at some point in this light language we were communicating with through vibration and frequency, I expressed my care and my concern for the human and the body and the family and all of these things. And it was made known to me that I had a choice from the moment I arrived there to stay or to go. And I'm being welcomed in any way, any shape, any form, for as long as I wish to be there. There was no right, there was no wrong, everything was okay. And so as they supported me, as we were just kind of moving effortlessly through this space, almost like we were each stars or universes of our own, because the colors were continually shifting. And so these colors supported me as we moved and shifted and came into the epicenter of the space. And when you got there, it was almost as if you were brought to your formless knees in awe of this energy, of this being, of this illumination. And in that space, I know it now as the creator, and it never introduced itself as anything. It was always love, abundant love. And so I'm in this space and I'm finally awed by this beautiful ultraviolet white light. And it's humongous compared to the stars and the angelics and the other celestial beings that were present. To me, nothing had form in this space. Everything was light and vibration and sound. And so this beautiful, ginormous orb of creator light is calling. And I feel so connected. There was that instantaneous, circling back to what I was just saying, this instantaneous awareness that it was not separate from me. Looking and feeling around me, I began to understand intuitively that we were all part of this divine light, and that the angelics and the celestials and the stars, all of the different forms of light and light consciousness, as I like to term it, that were communicating with me were part of this creator light. And so in a sense, we are all fractals of this light, or fractals of God, or fractals of source or spirit, whatever vernacular you choose to quantify and qualify the ineffable. So as I'm receiving this abundant love, some part of my consciousness wants to completely merge with said light, with the creator. And yet some other part does not. And that made me curious, because as much as I wanted to go forward and reunify with the creator, I felt called back and a bit of obstruction. So it was more than a curiosity. And I felt really pulled and curious as if I should stay or if I should go. And in that moment, the angelics and the other celestial beings came in, and that's where they reiterated, there's no right or wrong. You may stay, you may go, you may stay in the in-between for a while. All are welcome here. It's okay. It's okay. And so with that, I was able to just be in the space and realize that I didn't have to do anything. And so I played with that for a while, possibly to decide what I wanted to do, to see if I wanted to stay. It's just what I did. Could have been byproduct too of being in the in-between. And then as I'm doing that, I start to really feel that pull get stronger to the body. And the angelics start giving more messages. And I start asking more questions, to the point of, if I go back, what will it be like? And there's no sugarcoating in my experience. The angelics were very firm. They let me know that if I went back, I was going to go through more suffering. I was going to go through more trauma. I was going to go through physical ailments again. But what they were basically letting me know is that I was going to go back to fulfill a soul contract that I had come here for, and that there were still parts of it that were karmic and that would not be fun for me. Now you can imagine, if my consciousness is still somewhat attached to the human because I am in between in a comatose state, does a complex trauma survivor want to go back to a body that has already been through severe decades of trauma and now medical trauma, and then return to go through more? Of course, that little part that was still very much human did not want to do that, not at all. And yet the soul had been held and healed in so much light that it was really recalibrated and reoriented through the one, as I call the creator. And through the Creator's light, I was able to then realize that my soul's evolution, the work that my soul knew it was equipped and had chosen to come here to do, was what I was truly aligned with. Yes, it was going to be difficult if I went back, but I would ultimately rise above it. And how exciting to the soul to know that it's returning to be part of a collective experience of profound healing. And so that causes me to decide it does want to return. Then I asked them quite clearly, how do I get back to the human? How do I get back to the body? And their answer was to look for lights unlike any others. My consciousness starts hyper focusing on one light, assuming I'm going to see one big light like the Creator, and then boom, back in the body. And yet I end up seeing 3 lights. One is this horrific yellow, piercing, very earth-like, artificial like light. And then these other 2 are very soft, also jewel tones. This time we have a very bright green, and then we also have a indigo. The indigo was very, very strong. And so, of course, the obnoxious loud light really got my attention at first, but the love pool, the vibration that I had been just immersed in the space, is coming from the jewel toned lights as well. They have a very different energetic signature than the celestials, than the angelics, than the stars, and then obviously from the Creator. But what's interesting, and always when I feel back into the state, is they didn't hold me the way that the other lights did. I felt an attraction to holding them. I wouldn't come to understand this attraction for approximately 3 more years. Yet, unbeknownst to me at that time, those were the auric signatures, the energy signatures of my children as they are now. And that's significant to me because those 10 years that Spirit referenced, my eldest was born 3 years into my reintegration journey, and my youngest was born 7. So they covered that like 10-year gap. I just had the 3 years alone. That totality ends up really being an anchor point to keeping me on the earth plane, because so many persons that have these experiences go through many difficult periods thereafter, and I was textbook in that way. So my sons appearing to me in this space and holding me then was very much a poetic metaphor for how their energy would serve me later on. I ended up returning and giving my children names, one that's associated to heaven and one that's associated to earth, because they very much have been my heaven on earth. They have brought me into balance here and really taught me how to bring the lessons of the cosmos into the body. So their light anchors me into really wanting to go back, and I am most grateful I did, and I held on to them in that space for a little bit of time just to savor. And so from there, I pivot and ask Spirit how this isn't taking me back to the body, but I really love this energy. And they're like, you'll know that energy again. You'll know it all again. You'll know this space again. You'll know us. None of this is leaving you. Should you choose to go, you just go back to embodied form. And so I then did go towards this artificial light. And the way it is over there, the minute you make a consciousness-based decision, you are catapulted into it. There's no in-between state. It's just instantaneous, everything. And so I look at this bright, horrific light, and next thing I know, I'm back in the body, like catapulted into the body, a very uncomfortable, traumatized body. And there is this horrific, bright yellow artificial flashlight, a ginormous one. And they were attempting to check my vital signs because, again, I had been declared brain dead and I'd been comatose at that point 3.5 days. So they're just looking for movement or rapid eye movement, anything like that. And sure enough, I came into right then. And it was very discombobulating to go from this beautiful, etheric, loving space and then suddenly have artificial light cast into your eyes. But that was my callback to the body, and that was the beginning, the very beginning of my journey with my NDE after effects. So as I return to my body and in this new form of consciousness is put into the very same body that I left, suddenly I realized that the person I was before, the Brooke that had gone into coma, the Brooke that had been ill with autoimmunity, was gone. And there was a new human, a new way of being and relating and communicating with this world. And so I had a miraculous, spontaneous healing and remission and completely healed from autoimmune disease. I left the hospital in less than a month. And so I had this miraculous, beautiful healing from the angelics. And yet, when I came back out into the human world, and I was learning to use my gifts without any support, I feel more connected and more in alignment and more in service to the light than ever before, because of that constant commitment, that constant call to come back to center and to come back to service and to use the darkness and the shadow and the pain to help others, to inspire others. And so that's really the crux of my work